Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we are going to be making an 18th century caraco. And to do this, I'm going to be modifying Black Snail's robe a l'anglaise pattern. I think this is always a good technique for people to learn how to kind of modify pre-made patterns, because it will really get you far, especially if you are not comfortable in pattern drafting, which is a very experienced skill, in my personal opinion, when it comes to sewing. So yeah, what is a caraco? Because I feel like this is something a lot of people aren't familiar with as far as like sewing historical garments for 18th century. You know, we all know of, you know, robe l'anglaise and robe le français or snack gowns, but I feel like the caraco really gets, you know, ignored, and it's actually a pretty important garment for the time period. It's sort of like what I would call a bodice jacket. It cuts, the whole top is very similar to, you know, an English gown or robe l'anglaise, and the difference is that it ends at about mid-hip to mid-thigh, and I like it because it's still very elegant looking and very pretty. I like that cut, and obviously the women back then liked it very much too, because it was sometimes considered a bit more of a practical option than having a whole dress ensemble. It would be lighter weight, it was less fabric, and just easier to do your more day-to-day stuff in without having to worry about getting your huge dress dirty. So it is, to me, a very important historical garment to showcase and make, because it was popular. It was popular for lower class women, middle class women, even upper class women. And there are still a lot of examples around to this day in museums of a different style caracos. Now for me, the cut that I'm gonna be going with is mostly based off this one. And obviously my fabric choices and color scheme is a little different. I just kind of had to go with what I had. I think it's a very interesting gown, and it's very fun to make, and it's fun to wear. Of course, I'm still kind of new to the whole 18th century fashion and historical sewing, so I would say I definitely kind of maybe still made a slight mistake, but that's okay. That's okay. That's what we're here to do, is learn, and you know, practice makes perfect. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and talk about what fabrics I used for this project. And yeah, as always, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell. Let's go make a caraco. What? Alright everyone, let's talk fabrics. So this is going to be what the main fabric piece is. It's the centerpiece fabric, so this will be my caraco. And then I have been debating for probably a couple weeks on what to pair it with, but I decided to go with this nice darker colored pink stripe. It's both are cottons, 100% cotton, and they're very sturdy cotton. This one's a little lighter weight than this one, but that's fine because this is just going to be the petticoat. I won't lie, originally I wanted to pair this, actually have this as the petticoat and have a really beautifully rich dark purple as my caraco, but it didn't happen. So we move on and we adapt. So let's go ahead and start cutting this out. The only piece I'm going to go over is kind of the big piece, which I'll show you guys in a minute. So this was the big intimidating piece I was talking about. It is the back piece for the fashion fabric, not our lining. And of course, this is Black Snail patterns that we are using. And as you can see, this is the part that goes on the back. And then we have this really long extended part that will get pleated down to the sides and front. Now, this one I want to talk about that's kind of interesting about this pattern that makes it so good for altering into a caraco is, to save paper, they do not have you print out the whole width, which is nice. not only because it saves paper, but that basically means right here, I kind of was looking at it on the dress form. If you just wanted to use this length, it would be perfect for roughly like a mid-hip caraco. If you did want to do like a mid-thigh, you would have to add a bit more. But that's what's kind of nice about this pattern for altering for these purposes, because it's not like too intimidating to alter. I don't know. To me, I thought that was kind of a bonus. So as I should have discussed, I believe I did discuss, caracos range anywhere from mid-hip to mid-thigh. I think I'm gonna go more with the mid-hip length. So yeah, let's cut everything out. Then we'll move on and I'll go over how to do the lining, and then we'll start on the fashion fabric. Another quick side tip, I think you would be very hard pressed to find a fabric that is wide enough to actually cover the whole extent of the width of the skirt pattern that you have. As you can see, I folded it here, and I will have to cut quite a bit more on a separate piece and then attach it. And that's just fine. It's just do the best you can. Fabrics do not come in that, like I said, it'd be quite surprising if you can find a fabric that is very decently width for the pattern, but there's nothing wrong with that. After all, piecing is period. So first step is actually to deal with our lining, which is our structural piece that's going to basically give the bodice a nice form. I say this because this is the piece that is made from, of course, the sturdier fabric, linen, so that you can have your fashion fabric be cotton or silk or whatever. And this also will have the boning put into it. So we have our back pieces here. This is our center back. And I'm just kind of going to zip through this really quick. But basically, we're going to obviously sew that up. And then I'll press the seams flat and we'll add a boning channel in there. Then once that is done, we will sew our side pieces and then our front piece to the side piece. Can you guys see that? And then yeah, we'll sew the front piece to the side piece. Now there is one boning channel in the instructions I'm going to be skipping because I think it's just a bit too much, which is you have a boning channel at the center and then also here, and I feel like I don't need that much so I'm just going to go with the center boning channel, the one on the side, and then the one in the front piece that comes at an angle to help keep a nice fit, so hopefully we don't get any wrinkling in the front. And yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna do those 3 channels because I am going to be wearing structured garments underneath it, so I'm really just looking for boning that's going to keep the bodice looking flat, I guess is the best way, not wrinkly. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I actually find it easier to put on the boning channels that are on the center back and on the, I guess, front pieces first before attaching everything. I kind of wish it was a little more clear as to where your boning channel should go. I just have to go by the picture, but I do believe basically you want, a decent gap at the top and the bottom so it doesn't get in your way when we're doing our lining. And I like to use just single fold bias tape. I find that a really nice, easy alternative to like buying twill tape, which can kind of be expensive sometimes. And I already own this, so in retrospect, I probably should have serged the sides of my linen before like attaching them, because my bias tape isn't quite big enough to completely cover up the raw edges from the seam, but that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew this on, and then we won't insert the boning just yet. So I'm gonna keep the tops open, is what you're supposed to do. So sew it all the way around, bottom closed, top open for the boning channels. So I'm just going to hit on a few things real quick, how I did a couple things off camera. So this is our side seam, like this is our front piece, this is our side back. And what you want to do to make that boning channel is you want to have quite a bit of a seam, and then you just flip it towards the back and sew this down. You got a boning channel. I also attached the sleeves, and you have a slight, see that, how there's a slight gap. Basically, you want it right in the middle of this piece. I'll go ahead and press the seam upward, and these are basted in place. Well, I don't really baste, I just sew it down. So this is sewn in place already. And the final step now is I'm going to go ahead and press and fold over all the way around this piece here. And then we are done with our lining for now, and we can move on. But I'm gonna go ahead and press that down, and also press this down. Okay, now we are ready to start putting on our fashion fabric to the lining. So before I do anything, I went ahead and I did a double hem on the bottom and the sides of what will be the skirt. So what we're looking at now is the very back, and there's all these lines that you need to mark. You have your center dash line, which is the first one that we'll be working on. So I've gone ahead and marked that, and then I've marked where these are going to be the pleats in the back. And what I'm going to do now is you take it and fold it in half. And I don't think it's picking up on the camera, but where I have my center dash line, I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way along there. We'll cut it open, press it flat, and then I will pleat my side pleats. So let's go and do that. And here's how my pleats turned out. I just went ahead and basted along the top after pressing them in place. And we're ready to attach it to the back. Now I actually prefer to do this on the dress form instead of just flat on the, it's almost a chalkboard, on the cutting board, because that way I can see how it's laying, because sometimes I have to either pull it up or pull it down. And I'm just gonna start by matching up the top at the center seam and pinning it in place. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just pin this along the top so I can get a rough idea of how it's going to lie at the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and sit down, support the weight of all the skirt part on my knees. I hope you guys can kind of see that. So the way this is going to be sewn is we're going to be sewing it along the top and the sides. That's why it's important that I see how it's falling, because I've done it before where I did not, because I did it on flat, like I had it raw and I had to pick out the seams because I didn't have it actually sewn wide enough. across, if that makes sense. Like, because you know, you have this swoosh of where either your natural bum will be or where your bum pillow or panniers will be. So you have to keep in mind, you can't just have it go straight down, or it'll look funny. I just feel like personally this is the best way to figure out how to and where to attach it, I guess, to your lining. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay everyone, so we have the back panel sewn on, and I have it on my dress form to make sure that it looks good. Now, if you're following along or doing this with the black snail pattern, or you worked with it before, you may have noticed that I'm doing one of the steps wrong, which is before I attach the back panel, I believe it actually tells you that you're supposed to pleat all of this up first. And I have done it that way before, and it's great doing it that way, but I actually wanted to try doing it after attaching it, because I feel like that way I'm not gonna have to second guess myself too much about, like, do I have the pleats big enough? Do I have them small enough? Is it too wide or too short for where I want it to hit on my bodice? So I thought it'd be a little different and a little interesting to do it differently, I guess, this time. So yeah, basically I just I wanted to try doing it this way, and now we're going to go over to the cutting table and we are going to pleat our sides to our lining base. And I also just realized I messed this up. I sewed the lining wrong. I was supposed to have my wrong sides together, and I've sewed my right side of my lining to... I don't care right now. I've done this before, I swear. I think I'm just in such a time crunch that I'm making mistakes I shouldn't. I did actually want to do the pleated skirt this way, but that the lining was a mistake. Alright, let's go and pleat the skirt to the lining. So I'm going to mark where I basically want my skirt to end, and a good rule of thumb is, is kind of where your neckline sort of straightens out, and just draw a straight line down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we will get our skirt to match up. Definitely think I like this more. At least doing it with a short skirted thing like a caraco. Maybe it would be absolutely terrible doing it with a full dress, but I liked it more because I had a better idea of what it was going to look like, where I wanted it to land, and I could actually start from this end and go that way, and I just thought that was a lot easier to work with. So let's go ahead and sew this on, and then I'll replicate this on the other side. right, so let's discuss the front. So what I've done is I go ahead and I press under the neckline edge, the front edge, and then the lower edge, which I don't know if you guys can see that. And I do that to both sides so that we'll have a nice smooth edge, no raw edges showing. And I'm just gonna go ahead and now literally sew all the way around. And I mean all the way around. We're not gonna worry about this being raw on the inside because our side back piece will be covering the raw edge of our front and our back. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that on both sides, and then we'll talk about the side backs. So I've brought you guys over to the ironing board. This is the wrong piece. Wrong side. Because I do find it easier to just work on the ironing board here, because sometimes I have to kind of fandangle a little bit with my pressing. So like I admit, the side back, I tend to find this just goes way too far down most of the time. So I have to like kind of fix it and such. But yeah, so I got my iron ready, and I guess the first thing is I usually start with this side, pressing it down because I find it fits the best out of the pattern. And then I can kind of, so I can press that, and I'm gonna have it overlapping where that raw edge is for the front. I hope that makes sense. That's gonna be what basically finishes off, so we don't have to worry about having a raw edge. So I'll pin that in place, and I pin it along the armhole. I'm not gonna have to fold that over because we will have a sleeve being put in. So I'm just pinning that in place. Kind of the same thing just goes for along the edge now. So I'm gonna go ahead and just basically kind of go along, figure out where I want it, and I just have to slowly press it and pin it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I will sew everything down. Now, you may notice that I've gotten myself a little gap here. This is not the first time this happens. If this happens to you, you can just cut a little square of your fabric, slide it in so that it's also folded under, and then no one will be the wiser. Except you guys are now the wiser that this has happened to me because I'm telling you about it. But this always happens. I don't know why. One side always happens. That always happens to me on one side. I bet you anything, it does not happen on the other. I don't know what this is, but whatever. Alright, so the bodice is done. The last part I did not go over was that I did that piece that's supposed to go at the top, and you just, you know, kind of the same way and everything else. You just fold it over, iron it over, pin it, and sew it in place to cover up that nasty raw edge at the top. And then I went ahead and attached the I don't know, the armband? I guess we're gonna call it that. And now I gotta put her aside because we have to focus on the final part, which is the sleeves. So this is what our sleeve looks like. I don't 100% get this huge C section in this pattern. I don't really enjoy it that much, and for this I'm probably gonna cut it down and make it a little less dramatic. But before that, let's go ahead and make the dart. This is for our elbow, and I'm just gonna do that. Just draw my line. I haven't actually decided if I'm gonna give myself like a fancy flounce at the bottom of the sleeve. It's not necessary, since this is sort of like day wear, if you will, like colonial day wear. We'll just kind of see. I'm gonna kind of look at some more references in a minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the dart. After that, I'll, you know, right sides together and sew this up. And I'm probably gonna cut some of this because I don't want it to be just so like, not for this look. It's okay with some other looks, but I don't. Spoilers, I've already done my left sleeves and I didn't like how it looked. So I'm gonna jump ahead and go ahead and make the sleeves solid, and then it'll be piecing it onto the bodice. Wow. All right. So my sleeve is all set. It's hemmed at the bottom. Yes, you should have a lining for your sleeve. Why do I not do that? Because it just historically in the past, when I have put linings in the sleeves, if they're not super baggy like the weave sleeves, they always get too tight. So sometimes I just avoid it. I know I shouldn't, but I do. So, just start with that side seam. You guys see that? Sorta, maybe. So we'll just start with the side seam and of course your seam in your sleeve. If you don't feel comfortable just weaving it like this, they do have lines on the pattern showing you where you're supposed to attach it. It's fairly straightforward in my opinion. Basically, it's just the whole underarm. So until you get to that where your I can't remember the name today. Armband is. That's what I'm going to call it. We're going to call it an armband. Just stop. So I pin from where the armband starts to where the armband starts on the other side. Words. And so we're just sewing, like I said, literally your underarm seam. And then we'll get her on the dress form and I'll show you guys how to do the rest of the sleeve, which interestingly enough, like when I used to watch people setting their sleeves in colonial or 18th century gowns, it was very intimidating when I first watched it. But now that I've done it, even just 2-3 times, I actually think it's kind of easy. I mean, it's not like the easiest, but I kind of like it, like compared to like the way we kind of do modern sleeves nowadays. I don't know. Let me go do this. Okay, so this is what we have. As you can see, I've already pinned this side in place. This is kind of a statement though, don't you guys think? Just having the shoulder open? No. Okay, I'm kidding. I find this not to be, as like I said earlier, I think this used to really intimidate me, but it just doesn't anymore. And usually what I do is I just kind of, it's just a matter of playing around. I know I want the front to be smooth and then more like have little pleats on the top and curving over the back. So like I said, it's kind of just playing around with it, seeing what you like. The reason I say that this used to kind of intimidate me was because I feel like on YouTube, a lot of the historical costumers that talk about this process, they really emphasize that you should do this, like have someone do it while you're wearing it. And that's not really possible for all of us. But I find it works just perfect on a dress form. So here is a close-up of how I pin that. And like I said, just kind of make sure that your sides look good on both. Like they kind of got a nice, I guess, symmetry. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a lot of YouTubers that do like 18th century sewing, and they just really overemphasize it. It's like, you must have someone help you do this or it will be trash. And maybe I just totally was misreading it. To me though, it felt that way. And no, you don't. You can just have a dress form. I did see even another YouTuber do it on themselves, which I would not personally do just because I'm like, I don't want to pin myself. But so I'm going to go ahead and stitch these in place because I'm happy with them. I may work with this one a little bit more, but I can't tell if it's just the wrinkle, but yeah. And then it's just 2 more steps. All right, so I went ahead and I took the final pieces that you should have on the side, cut out but not used yet, which is the strap fashion pieces. And we've gone ahead and pressed it, you know, pressed all the sides down, because essentially we're finishing this just like how we finished the other pieces. I think I'm very close to the end of my brain power working. And I'm just gonna go ahead and pin this slowly around until I get it nice and in the right spot. I'd also like to point out that I do apologize for not really appearing in this video and probably the next colonial video that is coming out soon. There's a couple reasons. In truth, I'm pretty grumpy with my camera right now because just, I don't know, it's like lately, every time I do like footage looking at myself, my camera's just like, okay, let me just make it really fuzzy and terrible quality. Ha ha ha! Isn't that funny? And it's not funny. So for obvious reasons, I'm getting pretty grumpy at it. So yeah. After this is just putting in whatever closure you want at the front. You're gonna learn here, I'm really fallen heavily on doing the hook and eye tape because I'm very lazy, and I just like that I don't even have to worry about it like lining up. I sew it in, I call it a day, I walk away. Do I regret the choice later? Maybe, but I'm just so lazy. And I've been really relying on it way too much lately in everything historical, because I'm like, oh, it's there, it's historical. I'm gonna do that. Okay, bye. Yeah, I notoriously like hate buttons, and really, like I said, with 18th century stuff, like this is probably the better option unless I wanted to pin it to myself, and I just really don't want to deal with that at all. So yeah, this is kind of the last bit we're going to talk about for the bodice, or the Caraco, which is exciting. So this is my first Caraco. I like them because they have that elegance of the time period, but a little more, they're just a little more practical. And that's nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Practicality. So I guess I'll finish up the Caraco and we can go and talk about the petticoat skirt portion of this outfit, which also comes with your black snail pattern if you were following along and using black snail pattern. So yes, also guys, I'm just so happy I've been able to use this fabric. I have had this fabric not like as long as some of my others. I got it on clearance at like a local quilting store, which I think they're a local fabric store. They're not always all quilting stuff, but can you just appreciate how pretty it is? Like, I've really just gotten into this whole minty seafoaming green, but then just the really cabbagey pink, I want to say peonies. Of course, I always want to say roses, but I think they're actually supposed to be peonies. But I'm just so glad I've been able to use this for a project. I think it really matches some of the way I've seen like cotton prints for the flowers during the 18th century. And I will tell you guys, I have managed to use almost every inch of this fabric for this Caraco. So that always makes me happy. I hate when I get left over with just the sliver of like fabric, like half a yard, because I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? But I managed to use all of it, which was 4 yards. So yay! Okay, I'm gonna finish it up and let's talk about the skirt. I don't want to spend a whole ton of time kind of talking about the skirt. I feel like the pattern is fairly straightforward. I have my center marked, and this is my pattern piece for my waistband, which you could also just have cut out. Essentially though, I'm just gonna pleat it. I start with a box pleat in the middle and then just knife pleat out the opposite direction. I just find that is kind of my favorite shape. Until it, and I'm just gonna pleat it until it fits the waistband, and then I'm gonna baste it and sew the two sides together and hem it. And yeah, because that is just, it's just not that complicated. Like I said, I don't want to waste too much time. It is complicated, of course, when there's a cat stepping on your fabric and not letting you pleat. But it shouldn't be too complicated for you if you don't have an attention-seeking cat. So, I think though, either I haven't decided if I'm going to be doing anything fancy to the skirt yet. We'll get it put together and I'll decide from there. If not, then that is it. That is this video done and we can move to the reveal. So we'll see in a second. I'll have to see how I feel and how much time I have. Dress too dirty. I'm too far away. Come on, get closer. Nope, that's too far leaning down. Okay. Is none of that filming?